This is The Big Story, presented by Herb Chambers.
DiMasi was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. He will report in November to Devens here in Massachusetts.
Any thoughts going into the sentencing?
His co-defendant, Richard McDonough, was sentenced to 7 years. Now, these sentences are far below the sentencing guidelines that U.S. District Court Chief Judge announced yesterday in saying that DiMasi could be sentenced as high as 19 to 24 years under federal sentencing guidelines. Those guidelines are only a benchmark, a starting point, however, and the judge is allowed to stray.
You're not getting the speaker. A chapter is closed. We're happy to be past it. The next chapter in this judicial proceeding will be in the First Circuit. And that's all we have to say. Thank you.
So the judge was considering his decades in service and straying from those sentencing guidelines. It should be noted, however, that 8 years for Mr. DiMasi is considered a tough sentence at the same time. It's the highest sentence ever handed out to an elected public official in the District of Massachusetts, a federal sentence.
It was simply about a high, powerful Speaker of the House who took bribes and kickbacks in exchange for using his political position to benefit himself and his friends.
Judge Wolf noted during a lengthy decision yesterday that DiMasi violated the core standards of public service by taking bribes. And the judge found a number of issues that DiMasi knowingly did this, knowingly participated in a scheme. It wasn't spontaneous. He found that DiMasi actually calculated and orchestrated the scheme. And that was part of the tough sentence, part of the reason for the tough sentence, the judge said. He also said, again, that he has long called for tougher sentencing guidelines for this very nature, for this public corruption issue, which he says betrays the trust of the everyday citizen. DiMasi has indicated that he will appeal. That's bound to take a few years. The key question here is whether Judge Wolf will allow him to stay free pending that appeal. It's up to the judge's discretion. The judge will have to decide whether DiMasi has any grounds for an appeal. Prosecutors want to say he doesn't, but at the same time, the judge noted, what's the rush? It's not like DiMasi's going to flee. Prosecutors had maintained that they wanted to stick by the 12 to 15 years. They thought it was appropriate, given the nature of the crime, given the nature of Mr. DiMasi's scheme, given the nature of his failure to accept his responsibility and own up to it. That was said a lot. It's said by Judge Wolf, said by prosecutors, by a lot of observers, that Mr. DiMasi still hasn't lived up to his crime, hasn't accepted responsibility. He's shown to be contrite, but he actually hasn't apologized and recognized what he did was wrong. That's a factor that could play into whether or not the judge allows him to stay free. But prosecutors maintain that 8 years is sufficient, and what they had asked for would have been even more sufficient.